Hello, traders. Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com. Sunday, the 28th of April, 2024. In this edition of your weekend video newsletter, we'll look at some scenarios that may play out this week. With earnings in full swing, Microsoft and Google gave us a nice little boost on Friday. That gave us 13 bullish indicators, 4 neutral and 3 bearish to start the week. Market gamma is light positive for Monday's opening, with support around 5,000 and resistance at 5,100, 5,150. So with that in mind, let's get started. So at a bare minimum, I'm looking for a retest of the 50-day moving average overhead. We already tested 6% off of the highs. In a mildly bearish scenario, would be unable to make it through the 50-day, and on a pullback, the markets be unable to hold the low at 49.50. Market gamma would turn negative in that case. Coming into Monday, market gamma is fairly positive. We also had a fairly bullish signal on the New York FANG index, regaining more than 50% of its lost ground since the high that we put in 3 weeks ago. Stochastics and MACD are both turned up, with growth stocks picking up a bid. As we can see in this ratio between growth and value, IGX, IVX, with growth bouncing back above its 21-day. 21-day is still pointing down and to the right, so is value. We'll look for these two to continue. We'll also be watching how value plays out over the next few weeks. As we can see with this chart, rotation has been into value, with the blue line leading into the improving sector, while the growth components have dropped from leading down into the weakening industry group, even though we did have a bounce on Friday. Presently, this is neutral to bullish for the coming week. We're watching the S&P Equal Weight Index, which removes the weight of those stocks in the New York FANG index, with the number of stocks above the 21-day pushing to 40%, number of stocks above the 50-day also moving higher. New York Stock Exchange with a similar scenario in the number of stocks above their 50-day. A50R is showing 900 stocks out of over 2,200 are still above the 50-day moving average, so we'd like to see that turn up in the next couple of weeks. Finally, on the indices, we had small caps with a little bounce on Friday, looking for that to push back up. This would be a risk-on signal if we see this risky asset class starting to move higher. And we'd like to see more stocks participating. In this particular scenario, advanced decline percent for the S&P 500 and the second to top panel. Mid caps, small caps, and NASDAQ in descending order, all turned up with the exception of the S&P 500, which could be that rotation that we're looking for, while we look for that to turn back up and head towards plus 30% in the next couple of weeks. In addition, volatility was rather suppressed last week. We had the VIX depressed and moving lower. That gives us a green signal on this chart, which tells us to look for higher highs and higher lows on the 60-minute time frame of the S&P 500 in the top panel. When green, look for higher highs and higher lows. VIX fading from the recent highs at 2150. With the New York Stock Exchange McClellan volume oscillator turning from the green zone, this is bullish in the short term. We do have support from the New York Stock Exchange showing this breadth indicator, new highs minus new lows, back above the zero line, indicating that we could see a follow-through this week. Advanced decline in the middle panel also pushing higher, and the New York Stock Exchange composite gave us green elder sticks into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Overall, we're looking for a bounce to start Monday trading, unless we get some sort of unusual news out of bonds, currencies, or commodities. The 10-year Treasury yield continues a bullish trend. This is hampering any super bullish scenario. I would say mildly bullish if this continues, to neutral. We could see a pullback, especially if the 10-year yield and the US dollar begin to correlate strongly to start the week. With the dollar currently showing a bullish flag, if this was a stock, you'd be looking for a cup and handle pattern, potentially a breakout above 107. If we saw a breakout above 107, we'd probably be looking at a fairly bearish scenario. Commodities have been fairly strong. You can see the CRB index is at the recent highs on this daily chart. While referencing the monthly chart, the ratio between the S&P 500 and the CRB index is showing us that the momentum is still clearly pretty bullish. That said, we want to see commodities perhaps fade over the next couple of weeks, but we certainly don't want to see commodities ripping higher. With gold and silver presently off their recent highs, consolidating gains, we'd want to see this ratio continue higher if you're bullish equities. With the S&P 500 stocks forecasting prosperity and growth, and gold, which would be forecasting fear and security if for some reason the Fed does something unusual on May the 1st when they report their current findings on the economy. Of course, one thing that would help is the price of gasoline and crude oil, which has been in a $30 range since 2022, between 65 and 95. With the price of gasoline futures also in a similar range on this weekly time frame, marking time near the highs on the daily. Now, if you're bullish the economy, you want to see this pulling back a bit along with the dollar and the 10-year yield. So at this point, we have a mildly bullish scenario starting off on Monday, keeping the bears at bay. Sectors are improving. Reading from left to right in the top panel, you can see the dates. This is updated on Fridays. A change from crimson red to slightly yellow oranges, showing a change to a more bullish stance. We also had the international indices giving us a similar picture with some strength noted in Turkey. China bounced very hard last week as well. So watching the international indices for some opportunities, not a bad idea as well. While the U.S. indices are our primary focus. Accordingly, IBB is below its descending 10 EMA. Watch for that to show a bit more weakness. Real estate, transports, real estate and transports not doing that much. These are weekly time frames. Semiconductors obviously had a great week, so watch AMD. Reports earnings on Tuesday, I believe. Some of these semis, Broadcom also very strong last week, along with NVIDIA pushing higher. Materials holding on to its 10 EMA. Momentum is still pretty bullish. Communications assisted, despite the Meta earnings, Google popped, helping to neutralize the Meta drop that we saw last week. I'd expect Meta buyers to continue to pile in, with Meta most likely producing a base over the next 5 or 6 trading days. Watch for any kind of follow-through. Volume was pretty decent on Friday. Stochastics and MACD are near oversold. We could see that turn up, though I don't expect anything for the next couple of days. While Google ramps higher on this weekly time frame, surpassing all of the targets that we had in 2023, breaking out 1618 overhead around 185, I believe, keeping the communications sector right at the 10 EMA for this week. If you're thinking about setups, we'll most likely see strength in energy. ExxonMobil reported along with Chevron last week. Those dipped a little bit, but looking for some trades there. Energy looks strong. along with the financials above its 10-period EMA on the weekly time frame. Industrials also pushed higher back above its 10 EMA as value stocks continue to show strength. With XLK technology trying to get back above its 10 EMA, I would expect to see maybe some more distribution up here in the short term. If not, if we get back above the 10 EMA, then we'll reassess it towards the end of the week. Consumer staples bouncing. Last week we had Procter & Gamble and Colgate. This week we got Coca-Cola reporting. Clearly bullish above its 10 EMA at 52-week highs. With utilities following suit, this looks like we could continue higher as yields become more and more an issue with investors. They'll start to look to the utilities for compensation. With a wee bit of weakness in healthcare, not much to go on at the present time. There's a couple of names that look pretty good. Pharmaceuticals like Merck, currently trading at highs, looking for that to push higher and for Bollinger Bands to open up. That's one that Grover pointed out early last week. And finally, consumer discretionary, managing to push back towards the 10 EMA. It's still below the 10 EMA, so consumer discretionary is neutral at the present time, with metals and mining above its 10 EMA following through. Another industry group and sector to watch if you're thinking bullish trades or hedging. Together with consumer discretionary, retail is also trying to get back above its 10 EMA. Finally, we have the ratio between consumer discretionary and consumer staples. Very important indicator to watch, especially if you're always bullish equities. When this turns lower, you're either neutral to slightly bearish. You can see the bear market that started back in 2022. This turned decisively lower, whereas prior to that in 2021, we went sideways. A couple of times we gave signals that looked like it was going to become more bearish and turned out to be nothing more than a consolidation. So we're on the precipice here. We could either bounce, retest the 50-day, or roll over and test the 50% 618 Fibonacci levels from the October low, depending on what the Fed has to say on Wednesday, May the 1st. Once again, starting off the week, we have 13 bullish indicators. 4 are neutral and 3 are bearish. Short term, we have a bearish trend that could turn to more bullish as gamma is slightly positive to start trading on Monday, with many of these IBD 50 stocks shown below looking very strong. In particular, check out Wingstop, giving a fairly bullish setup to start the week. Presently trying to come out of a flat base. Bollinger Bands are starting to open up. RSI is rising. Volume picked up on Thursday and Friday. Stochastics and MACD both turning up. With the company reporting on May the 1st, Wednesday, coincident with the Fed, early morning before the open. So it is possible that we get a few days of upside in Wingstop. Last time around, of course, they beat expectations with double-digit revenue growth and modest earnings growth for this company that operates more than 1,850 locations worldwide. That said, earnings on Wednesday before the bell. American Express, we're looking for a little fade after the earnings move we saw 2 weeks ago, Friday. We had a nice pop into the middle of the week, and then we faded. We're looking for a fade that we can buy near the breakout level 6 days prior. Google, of course, reported earnings. It's on the IBD 50. Bollinger Bands opening up top and bottom. Volume was well above average, nearly 70 million shares traded hands on Friday. The company is now going to pay a dividend for the first time. Semiconductors were strong last week. Broadcom following through off of that lower Bollinger Band, with stochastics and MACD turning higher. Despite missing on earnings growth, they did disappoint. However, revenue growth is growing at 34.2%. Price action shows that institutions have been picking up shares. Not like it was in December, but still fairly bullish. Looking for a retest of recent highs. RSI is rising, showing strength of trend. Centos is a very important company to watch, representing over 1 million customers worldwide that buy and rent uniforms and corporate material from CentOS. It's an economic barometer. When bullish, you'd be looking for higher highs and higher lows. The 50-day is up and to the right. This is good for the economy and something to make a note of. Banks were very strong last week. I know Acceleration and a few other people. Steven, I believe, bought some Citigroup. Maybe Frano did. I also bought some June calls in, I think it was the 6250s on Citigroup. Also trading Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, looking for strength in that group. While Wells Fargo and some of these banks are consolidating, looking for higher highs and higher lows. Goldman Sachs, 52-week highs, with MACD and stochastics pushing higher. RSI has yet to get to overbought, showing strength of trend, looking for a follow-through this week. Bollinger Bands are opening up, and volume looks pretty strong. DoorDash looking pretty strong, moving back above the 50-day. RSI showing strength of trends, with MACD and stochastics in a bullish scenario. Look for a follow-through this week as the company reports on Wednesday after the bell. MCore Group looking very strong, pushing higher on volume. MACD and stochastics rising, RSI as well. Another construction-related name that recently reported earnings, revenue growth of 18.7% and a near triple-digit earnings growth of 79.7%. In the mechanical, electrical, construction facilities industry group for non-residential and residential facilities, looking pretty strong. Eaton reports on Tuesday. Energy-related revenue growth of 10% and earnings growth of 23%. Stock is basing at highs. Wait for earnings, and we might have a trade there as well. Stochastics and MACD have turned up. NVIDIA remains on the IBD 50, back above the 50-day moving average, looking for RSI to continue, showing strength of trend. Stochastics and MACD turning. Continues to push higher, just shy of 52-week highs. Energy names like Quanta Services looking for a push higher, looking pretty strong. Stochastics and MACD turning, volume picking up. Royal Caribbean, the strongest of the group. Volume was well above average over the last week. MACD and stochastics rising, retesting 52-week highs. RSI showing strength of trend. Look for the breakout this week in Royal Caribbean. Samsara IoT, that one took off last week. RSI, MACD, stochastics all rising. Along with Toast in the technology/restaurant support industry group, looking for a follow-through. It reports a week from now. Looking for Toast to continue this trend to the upside, descending channel. On the daily and on the weekly, we can see that we could be testing the highs at 27 in the short term. All depends on earnings, so keep it in mind. Looking for a follow-through this week. Okay, traders, that's going to do it for me. This is Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com, Sunday, the 28th of April, 2024. I'll send out a watch list later tonight around 12 midnight on the East Coast, around 9 o'clock on the West Coast, so be sure to check your inbox for that. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care, and we'll see you in the morning. Ciao.